Hey super friends, my name is Neil and I am here because today the first two episodes of DC's Creature Commandos are now streaming on Max in the US. I have had the great pleasure of seeing all 7 episodes in this season, and I am going to be with you every Thursday through January the 9th as we take a deep dive into the stories, the characters, the surprises, everything. We are leaving no stone unturned as we take a look at DC Studios' very first little just a mini taster of the DC universe. So without further ado, let's dive in on episodes 1 and 2. So there is no two ways around this. I know it, you know it, James Gunn knows it. This is our first glimpse into the DCU, and so everyone is looking at this and looking to say, okay, who are we going to see? What is going to be in this? What does this world look like? This is our first chance, albeit a small version, of seeing what that wider world is going to look like when Superman arrives next year, when Supergirl arrives in the following year, and all of those projects that are lined up that DC Studios are working on. And so I think what is really impressive about Creature Commandos is the fact that it absolutely flies out of the gate in its first scene, even its first frames, with world building that tells us that actually what James Gunn and Peter Safran are doing is building a DC universe that is very, very well realised. I had not anticipated or really put that much thought into how Creature Commandos could start. What you will see from these first 2 episodes is there are there's a lot of similarities with what Gunn did with the Suicide Squad. And you're going to find that the Suicide Squad is probably a point of reference that I use quite a lot as we talk about these 7 episodes, just because Amanda Waller is obviously involved. They are kind of dubbed Task Force M, as in Task Force Monster. You know, you're going to Bel Rev, you will see them in prison, you will see them picked and going on a mission. You have the whole consequence hanging over them that their heads could get blown up at any second. And so there are a lot of similarities between who the Creature Commandos are and who the Suicide Squad are as well. And obviously you have carryover as well, so Weasel will be in there, and perhaps you might see some other characters. Who knows? But that aside, there is a lot of the makeup of the Creature Commandos that is very similar to what James Gunn did with the Suicide Squad. And in that case, some of the aspects of Creature Commandos as a show will feel very familiar to you. Only, now we're in animation, they're even more bonkers. This is absolutely James Gunn unhinged, doing what Suicide Squad alludes to, but just in full Technicolor animated glory. So, we are flying right out of the gate with some world building. You get a mention of Themyscira, we get to see some Amazonians, we're talking about the sons of Themyscira, which is a very interesting political point, which I think we're finding within the DCU, especially to learn this early on. Cersei, who's played by The Witcher's Anya Chalotra, is in there instantly to set her up as a villain who will maybe be pulling the strings as part of Creature Commando's storyline, which is something that you'll find we're going to talk about again a lot as episodes come and go over the next 7 weeks. But can we talk about the world building for a second? Because as I just said, I wasn't expecting it. It surprised me, and it was brilliant. We, in that first scene, learn so quickly that Themyscira is something that's widely known. So in terms of the DCU, and again, this universe, because remember, this is all one Earth, this is the same Earth from Superman, they're already aware of the Amazons. So are they aware of Wonder Woman? They're aware of Cersei, they're aware of a lot of the politics of Themyscira, and what James Gunn very cleverly does is immediately dive into some politics and kind of have a little poke at the idea of being too woke, with the fact that there is this group of men who've called themselves the Sons of Themyscira, who have teamed with Cersei to help her take over Pakistan, which is a deep dive from the comics, which we will talk about as well as we go through this season, and that in return she might help them take over this island of women. She wants to help the men take over the island of women. So there is some very interesting, probably slightly controversial politics, which I'm sure will upset some corners of the internet. But what is the main thing here? This is a well-realised Earth. This is an Earth who has heroes. This is an Earth that has politics. It has conflict. And so as you know, James Gunn has said this is only a small taster of what the DCU is going to be like. So for that small taster to be in that first scene and to communicate that there is a lot already happening on this Earth outside of anything that might be happening in Superman or what might be happening kind of intergalactically in Supergirl is very, very interesting. So amazing, straight out of the gate. Really impressed to see how much there is already an idea and a sense of what is happening on this version of Earth. So great start. We immediately head to Bel Rev, and what we learn very, very quickly, particularly once you've watched these 2 episodes, is that each one will focus on a different member of the Creature Commandos team. So today you're getting 2 brand new episodes for the premiere. The first of those is called The Collywobbles, written by James Gunn, who wrote all 7 episodes of the season, and directed by Matt Peters. The second episode is called The Tourmaline Necklace, again, obviously written by Gunn and directed by Sam Liu, who is an absolute god of DC animation. Matt Peters is a name that comes up a lot when it comes to DC animation as well. And this is showrun by Dean Lorey, who's worked on some of the amazing DC animated shows of recent years like Harley Quinn and Kite Man. So again, really great DC talent behind the scenes on this. But sorry, that second episode, Tourmaline Necklace, will focus on the bride, played by Indira Verma. And you'll see, as we go through the season, each episode will focus on the story of one of the Creature Commandos characters, and they will use that backstory to kind of underpin and explore who they are and where they are in terms of the mission that's happening in the present day. So, Frank Grillo is playing Rick Flag Sr., who is our eyes and ears into this world in the first episode. We learn about a lot of his connection with Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis, who is back and still playing Waller. Her voice is an instant set of familiarity, which is wonderful. It's great to hear her, it's comforting, it's familiar, and she just gets that character. It's nailed instantly. The transition from live action to animation is seamless for her as well, which is a great sign of how things might work moving forwards, particularly with a character like Flag, who we're obviously going to see in Superman and we're going to see in Peacemaker Season 2. So there's already a sense, again, of building out that world, of it feeling very well realised, of characters being able to flow in and out. And I'm excited. I am very excited, can you tell? Episode 1 obviously has a lot to do in terms of setting up these characters as well. So a lot of what you're going to see in episode 1 is quite predictable, just in terms of going to Bel Rev, meeting each of the characters. So that's the bride, played by Indira Verma. That is Nina Mazursky, played by Zoe Chow. That is also G.I. Robot, played by James Gunn's brother. I nearly said James Gunn. Sean Gunn, who also voices Weasel, who returns from the Suicide Squad. And then you also obviously have, as well, Dr. Phosphorus, who is played by Alan Tudyk, who may or may not have another role that comes up later on that is going to be very, very important to storytelling going forward. So you're going to meet these guys in the kind of non-human wing of Bel Rev. We're going to put the team together. We're going to do the whole bombs in the head, and we're going to send them on a mission. So it's very much a by-the-book kind of introduction, but with a lot of character in there and a lot of chance to have fun, just because these are not human. So, you know, Weasel is already a point of interest for us from the Suicide Squad. You get to see him, you know what to expect from that. There's a kind of comedy relief in terms of his character that will translate here into this, which will be very interesting when you come to see his episode a bit further down the line. And then we're off. We're off and running, and we're off to Pakistan, which, if you've picked up on the fact I've already mentioned that once and that it is a deep cut, this is a very important location. And this, again, is another instance where James Gunn is telling us and showing us just how important the world building of the DCU is going to be, and also how much it's going to connect back to the source material. So, Pakistan. You may have Googled it already while I'm talking about it, but this is a small country, part of the former Czech Republic in terms of the landscape of the DC Comics universe. So it's in Eastern Europe, and it has a lot of importance in Action Comics and Superman in terms of its connections to Lex Luthor and who and what Lex Luthor is up to in the storyline where it is a focus. So I'm not going to get too deep into it in this video because it could be a good topic for maybe some of our predictions on what might be happening in Superman when it releases next year. So I'm going to follow up on it a bit later. So the Commandos are being sent to Pakistan to protect Princess Ilana, voiced by Maria Bakalova. She is, as we know at this point in these 2 episodes, she is the focus of Cersei's plan. Cersei and the Sons of Themyscira are wanting to take over this nation for whatever reason, and so the Creature Commandos need to protect the princess and stop Cersei. So essentially, episode 1 is about getting our characters from Belrev to Pakistan and then having everything kind of go probably completely horribly wrong in true James Gunn fashion. Again, if you think to the Suicide Squad, when they arrived at the Corto Maltese, things were not as they expected, which is something you can anticipate where Amanda Waller is involved. There are things that happen in Mission which maybe throw things off. Not to forget, these are a group of people who've been thrown together, not of their own free will, who don't necessarily want to be there, and their natural instincts are to escape. So immediately, what Gunn is trying to do here is get the characters from A to B, but then allow their personalities to impact where the story goes from there. So whilst this is the Rick Flag episode and we learn some of how he feels with the loss of his son from what happened in the Suicide Squad, spoilers for that, very sorry if you've not seen it, maybe go watch it first because there are some connections. It's then about how does the bride react when she's arrived in this country where she has some personal connection? How does G.I. Robot? How does Dr. Phosphorus? How does Nina Mazursky? They don't function yet as a team, and that's something that we have to see happen over the next few episodes. So episode 1 becomes very much about getting them there and what do they do when they arrive, leading us into episode 2, which is where Gunn is really able to begin to break out from the mold and show us what both this show and these characters and the DCU are then capable of. So really, episode 1 is exactly what you would expect from a first episode. It is setting everything up, but it does it in a really wonderful and beautiful way that I'm very, very impressed by, which leads us into the Tourmaline Necklace, directed by Sam Liu, again written by James Gunn, which puts the focus on Indira Verma's The Bride. Now, this is where Creature Commandos really, really comes into its own. And honestly, if I say that the first episode was a 4-star kind of great piece of setup, this is a very much 4-star character portrait. And this shows really what the formula of Creature Commandos is going to be like and how it's going to surprise us. So the thing that will instantly surprise you is that we go into the backstory of the bride and it is not good. It is at times difficult to watch, and I say that knowing full well what kind of show this is and the direction of kind of travel. What Gunn is doing is what Gunn has always done, and he has done it with the Suicide Squad, he did it with Guardians of the Galaxy, is show us that these characters are flawed, that whilst they might not be human in appearance, they are human in heart and in emotion, and he is exploring their stories in a way which will make them relatable and identifiable to the audience. Because let's not forget, there's going to be people that get picked off as the series goes on. There is going to be violence, there is going to be blood and guts, there is going to be comedy, there is going to be the action adventure. But Gunn always gives that to you with a very strong sense of character. And so very quickly, what you will get here with the bride is a really, really harrowing backstory. And it's just interesting to see how, if this is going to be an example of what the DCU is capable of in this kind of space, which is a very important thing to say, then I think it's very exciting that this is something which they are able to do. Gunn has talked really recently while he's been promoting this show about how different properties within the DCU will explore different angles and different genres and different tones. And so what we've got here is not necessarily breaking massively new ground, but it's really exciting to see the storytelling ability and the lack of limitation, the limitlessness of these characters, this premise, and this show. And so when we dive back and see how the bride and why the bride was created, which involves Frankenstein, played by David Harbour, who is brilliantly cast, there's just so much which is unexpected and impactful and resonates so well with the audience, which is very, very exciting to see. That was a lot of adjectives in one go. But essentially, if you're coming into this and you're expecting an action adventure which is purely kind of cartoony, then you're not going to get that. You're still going to get the level of storytelling that you would get from James Gunn in any other format, be it from kind of the Suicide Squad or Guardians of the Galaxy, however you're coming to this. If you have seen the kind of stories he likes to tell, this is not diluted purely because it's in animated form, which is, again, really, really exciting to see. I don't want to spoil too much, so I need to be careful about my words, but essentially, where we find ourselves at the end of episode 2, we're leading ourselves into some very interesting territory in terms of storytelling. It feels at this point like there's a lot more to the story than we first anticipate, which is really, really exciting and is able to push that narrative through the entire 7-episode season. So whilst it feels like the events in Pakistan are kind of wrapping up quite quickly or are bringing us to a particular point where you might be thinking, oh, I don't know where this is going to go, then that is very purposeful. There are so many times across this season that you are going to find the rug pulled out from underneath you. It's very exciting. You're never going to be able to quite predict where it's going to go next, which is really, really fun. The other thing that I need to talk about before we kind of wrap up on the first 2 episodes is the quality of the animation. I feel like if you have been watching DC's animated fare, then you'll see inspiration from some of the most recent shows like Harley Quinn and Kite Man, and also from the Tomorrowverse. I mean, if you look at the design work in terms of the animation, the thick black outlines are still there. The kind of slightly blockier, flatter, very clean looking colours are all still there. It's moved on slightly from the Tomorrowverse's kind of design inspiration from Otto Schmidt. There's less of that influence, but the technique and the style of the animation is similar. The thing that's different here is there's a lot more movement, there's more fluidity. It almost, in a way, if you kind of set aside the block kind of flat colouring, is almost kind of rotoscoped in a way, in that there's just so much movement and life within the frames. It has a lot of both Western and Eastern influence in that way. There are moments which feel slightly more anime inspired and are a bit more over the top and melodramatic, and where perhaps some of the detailing in the background might disappear to impact and emphasize what's happening in the front of the screen, the frame, sorry. But then at the same time, when you're in a wider shot or something that's a little more calm in terms of the action that's on screen, the backgrounds are beautiful and so full of small detail and shading and shadow and light and dark. It's very, very immersive as a show. And I think if you're a fan of some of the most recent DC shows, again, like Harley Quinn and Kite Man, but if you're also watching some of the other comic book animated stuff out there like Invincible, then you will definitely see how this builds on a lot of what has been successful in those shows and really tries to raise the bar. And this is really setting the bar very, very high for the DCU moving forwards, which is very exciting to see. Likewise, casting across the board is really, really fun. I feel like Nina Mazursky and Dr. Phosphorus are a little bit in the background, where The Bride and G.I. Robot and particularly Flag and Waller have been a bit more at the forefront of things. So there's going to be some time is going to be needed there to just develop the rest of the cast more. But we really are only 2 episodes into this, and there is obviously plenty of time for each person to take the spotlight, as it were, as each episode moves on. So next week you'll be seeing G.I. Robot as the person who we focus on. And I think that's all I wanted to say, because I don't want to dive too much into spoilers, because you want to experience this journey on your own. I think my takeaway from this is these are both really great episodes. I've given 4 stars to both of these in my reviews. The animation is great, the acting is great, the story is great, the world building is immense and has really surprised me in the most positive way. So as first looks go, this is very, very exciting for where the DCU might go in the future, but also where this show could continue to go if there are future seasons as well. So I am excited. I hope you are excited as well. You can read my reviews for both the Collywobbles and the Tourmaline Necklace over on our website, www.getyourcomiccon.co.uk. I want to know what you thought of these episodes as well, so please let me know in comments and replies below, or comment on the reviews on the website, or you can find me on social media at Neil Vag. Likewise, you want to keep up to date with everything that we're doing and all our coverage of Creature Commandos in the DCU, then head over to the website or find us on social media at Get Your Comic Con on all major platforms, apart from Twitter, where we had to change our handle and we are now at Get Your Comic Con 1. But that is a story for another day. I will see you next week, where we will be back to talk about episode 3 of Creature Commandos. So until then, stream it again, keep rewatching it, look for those small details, listen for those little nods, those character names, those things that might be in there that might allude to what's going on elsewhere in the world. Lots that we will circle back to later, and I will see you next time. Bye! Thanks for watching, Super Friends. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button just down below and hit the bell so that you can get notified whenever we release brand new videos. In fact, there's 2 more waiting for you to watch right here below. So what are you waiting for? Why not click play?